Good day and welcome. So let us continue our study of the compositions of the blood. In today's tutorial, we are going to basically focus on the process of hematopoiesis, specifically one of the types, that's erythropoiesis. So if you are new to this channel, I ask that you please subscribe and like our videos. So at the end of this tutorial, I expect that you will have understood what erythropoiesis is. Also, you would have known where it occurs and when does it occur, which physiological conditions trigger the formation of red blood cells. And lastly, we will have understood the mechanisms involved in the formation of the red blood cells. So stick through and witness this video to the end. So before we go on to looking at erythropoiesis, I would love for us to zoom out a bit and understand what hematopoiesis or hemopoiesis, what it is and what it entails. The reason is erythropoiesis is basically one of the types of hematopoiesis. You remember that the blood is basically made of a plasma component and the form elements that include the red blood cells, the white blood cells, and the platelets. The form elements here are formed by the process known as hematopoiesis. So the formation of these form elements occur through a mechanism or a process known as hematopoiesis. With that said now, where does hematopoiesis occur? Based on the stage of development, it will occur at different locations, meaning in the early fetus life, usually we found hematopoiesis occurring in the yolk sac, and later intrauterine life, the location of this occurrence changes and it now gets situated in the liver, the spleen, and the lymph node. Lastly, in adults and children, we found the hematopoiesis occurring in the red bone marrow of the vertebra, the sternum, the ribs, the pelvic bone, the skull, and the proximal and distal ends of long bones. So, the term hematopoiesis, as we saw earlier, is just used to describe the formation of the form elements of the blood. However, based on the type of form element that is being formed, we have different sub-mechanisms, which are the subtypes of hematopoiesis. Let us get an understanding of this. So, there are different types of hematopoiesis, right? Based on the form element that is being formed. And the first step here is erythropoiesis. This involves the formation of red blood cells. Next, we have leukopoiesis, and leukopoiesis is the formation of the white blood cells. And lastly, we have thrombopoiesis, which has to do with the formation of platelets or thrombocytes. Those are the subtypes of hematopoiesis. So, hematopoiesis actually, the entire process here, they are regulated by cytokines, which are chemicals, right? And these cytokines include the colony stimulating factors, the interleukins, the platelets derived growth factors, the thrombopoiesis stimulating factors, the erythropoiesis stimulating factors. So based on the type of hematopoiesis, that is whether erythropoiesis, leukopoiesis, or thrombopoiesis, you might have this cytokine station to activate the process or the pathway leading to the formation of these foam elements. However, for this tutorial, our focus is going to be on erythropoiesis. That's the formation of the red blood cell. So let's go on now and understand what really it entails. All right, before going to look at the primary event that occurs in the red bone marrow for the formation of red blood cells, let us take a few steps back and look at some hypothetical situations that might lead to that entire process. So, in an instance where you have a decrease in the blood volume, also, you have decrease in the red blood cell concentration leading to anemia, or you have low hemoglobin level. This will in turn lead to hypoxia. That is the decrease in the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood, thereby increasing the tissue's demand for oxygen. When this happens, this partial or decreased partial pressure of oxygen is detected by the renal peritubular cells that are located in the kidney. Upon detection, these cells stimulate the kidney to release one of the what? Cytokines family, that is the erythropoietin. So when this erythropoietin is released into the blood, it travels to the bone where you have the red bone marrow. And I guess you know what's going to go on. Once they reach in the red bone marrow, they trigger the process of erythropoiesis. So those are the few steps that lead to the actual mechanism that occurs in the red bone marrow. Before we go on, let me just point out a thing here. Erythropoietin is not just produced in the kidney, rather, they are also secreted by the liver, but the percentage is different. The kidney produces more, that's approximately about 85%, whereas the liver just produces about 15% of the erythropoietin. So the entire process leading from here going on to the mechanism in the bone marrow are regulated by different factors. So these are the factors that usually regulate this entire process. You have erythropoietin, as we've already seen the function. We also have growth hormones, we have testosterone, we have the thyroid hormone, we have vitamin B12 and folic acid. Each of these have their part to play in the proliferation and maturation of red blood cell, as we will see in subsequent slides. So now we are in the bone marrow. So what's going on here? When the erythropoietin reaches in the bone marrow, there are group of cells that are called one that are called the hematopoietic stem cells. To be specific, the type of cell that we are dealing with here are the hemocytoblast. What are these cells? Whenever you hear stem cell in the development of the human body, you know that they are talking about cells that have the potential to develop into other body cells, that is the mature ones. So the hematopoietic stem cell that you see here, they are basically cells that have the ability to develop into any of the form elements. So these cells can develop into the leukocytes, the platelets, and also the erythrocytes. Where are they located? That will come to your mind as we already described the location of hematopoiesis. These cells are found primarily in the bone marrow. However, we can also see them circulating in the peripheral tissue, like the blood vessels, right? And for children, we can find the hematopoietic stem cell in the placenta. So that is where we can find these cells. Also, what happens upon being stimulated by the erythropoietin, the cell undergoes division, right? It divides into myeloid stem cell and also the lymphoid stem cell. The lymphoid stem cell goes on to form the lymphocytes. As I stated, all of the form elements begin their formation from the hematopoietic stem cell. So our focus, however, is not on the lymphoid lineage, but the myeloid lineage. So the myeloid cell, further being stimulated, goes on to form the pro-erythroblast. This is also called the pro-normoblast. The pro-erythroblast is very important because it is the commitment stage of the formation of the red blood cell. The myelin does not only give rise to the pro-erythroblast, right? It also leads to the formation of the platelets, the granulocytes, and also the agranulocytes. So you see, from the hematopoietic stem cell, we're able to derive a lineage that will give rise to our red blood cells and also give rise to platelets, the granulocytes, and the agranulocytes. Those are the basic lineage. As I was stating earlier, the pro-erythroblast is very important. This is the commitment stage, meaning once the cell division or the cell proliferation reaches at this stage, it becomes committed to forming red blood cell. They do not have the capacity to develop into any other form elements except the red blood cell. So that is why we refer to this cell as a committed cell in the formation of the red blood cell. Let's continue. Next here, we still maintain our erythro or the pro-erythroblast. The pro-erythroblast further develops into our fourth cell. That's the erythroblast. Let me point out something here. When studying ever human development, that's in embryology, developmental biology, or whatever form, the surface blast always suggests a cell that is at the potential of developing into another cell. So, erythroblast, I will see here, just clearly tells us cells that is about to develop into erythrocytes. So, blast, about a simple way that I remember this is a blast is something that is about to like maybe explode. So these are cells that are at the verge of developing into other cells. The erythroblast stage has three substages. Let's get back to our procedure. So they have the basophilic erythroblast. They also have the polychromatophilic erythroblast, and they have the autochromic erythroblast. What you see here, I have the lighter two being in red. These two indicate the point at which we have the formation of our hemoglobin. So hemoglobin formation actually begins at these stages of the erythroblast stage of the red blood cells formation. Basophilic, as the name suggests, we have the cytoplasm of the erythroblast primarily occupied with basophils, right? So That is basically about the erythroblast stage of erythropoiesis. Next, this cell goes on to form the reticulocyte, somehow termed immature red blood cell. So these cells, they go on to give rise to red blood cell proper, or the mature red blood cell. These mature red blood cells, they are found in circulation and they exist for about 120 days, after which they are broken down and the components are recycled. But let's get some point here. When you notice I listed each of the various cells or I number each of the various cells as went along. So the first step, that was step 1 to 4, just to highlight, occurs in the bone marrow. And step 5, that includes the reticuloendothelial, or sorry, the reticulocyte, partly occurs in the bone marrow and also in the circulating blood. So at certain point, approximately 2 to 3 days, the reticulocytes stay in the bone marrow, and for about 2 days, it stays in the blood before being transformed to the mature red blood cell. And lastly, the sixth one, as I already stated, they are formed within the blood. So those are the steps. I try to stay very basic and provide you the basic information that, of course, you will be expected to know when you say you discuss the erythropoiesis or hematopoiesis leading to the formation of red blood cell. As I stated earlier, there are three subtypes of hematopoiesis, and we've just dealt with one. So in subsequent tutorial, we are going to look at the leukopoiesis and also the thrombopoiesis. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, please subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and also make your comments and recommendation as it relates to our tutorial. And I look forward to see you in the next video. Thank you.